Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming today. I appreciate you having me today. My name is Adam Smith, and I just wanted to spend a moment just encouraging you to, thanking you first and foremost for showing up to an important event like Unity for Humanity. It's a great event with a great purpose behind it, and I couldn't be more proud to be a part of it. So thank you for having me. Today, we're going to talk about what it takes to begin your creator's journey, and one of the things that I think is very important for people coming into the Unity family as a creator, and as you begin that journey down that road, it can oftentimes feel intimidating. Maybe you feel like, oh, I'm not an artist or I'm not a programmer. And if I'm not one of those, I can't be a creator. But the important thing to understand is that, yes, you absolutely can. We welcome you into that family. I went through that journey myself. So with that, I'll introduce myself quickly to give some context to that. My name is Adam Smith. My title at Unity is Director of Solutions Engineering. And what Solutions Engineering is, we are a team of engineers and artists that work very closely with many of Unity's strategic partners, and also some partners that you haven't heard of, game studios and other type of developers, whether they're from the film and animation space, media and entertainment, other industries. Our team partners with studios, big and small, who have a vision and a passion to bring their creation to life. And it's our responsibility to help them embrace Unity and adopt it in the most performant, optimized, and stable way so that they can take their vision and bring it to market with the best user experience possible by embracing the technology with all the best practices that really help them scale to meet the needs that their audience are going to have. But one of the things that makes me most happy about Unity is that I'm constantly meeting new creators or people who want to be a creator. And the great thing about what we are here to do and what we enable our audience to embrace is that if you have an idea, we want you to believe that you can bring that creation to market and that you can find an audience for the idea that you have in here. And just to give a little bit of inspiration, I was not a computer science major myself. I was actually a music major. I studied music technology and music performance, focusing on classical guitar and other instruments. So I did not have a proper computer science background. And to be an engineering director at Unity is kind of a dream come true. Unity was absolutely my dream job because many years ago, when the first versions of Unity came to market, I was working with other engine technologies. The studio that I was at in Orange County, California, we were building our own engines to make our games. And I didn't feel like I had the tools to be a creator. I was part of the process. I was doing audio production and items of that nature. But when Unity first came to market, I absolutely fell in love with the technology because I felt like this was a technology that allowed me to embrace the idea that I can bring my project to bear. And I hope that you can have that same experience as well. But all projects start with an idea. Some are big, some are small. Some great ideas come early. Some great ideas aren't found until the final phase of development. But at its core, every game in particular starts with an idea of a core game mechanic or just some core piece of functionality. And Unity enables you to take that core idea that you have, even if it's not quite fun yet, and start playing with it and seeing what you can do with that. And I'm going to show you how we can do that in very quick and iterative ways here in just a moment. But the key thought here is, if you have an idea for a game, or if you have an idea for that film or that short film or whatever you have on your heart and in your mind that you want to build, just know that we're here to support you. We want to be a part of that development journey so that you can bring that project to market and find an audience for the passion that you have in your mind. So if you don't have that great idea, but you have an idea that you want to massage over time, that's great. And that's how many great projects get started. So there's a few concepts as you begin this journey. And let me take one step back. It's important to say that this talk is not for the Unity experts when it comes to technology. But maybe if there's a little bit of inspiration that you need to continue pushing through your creation phase and your development phase, maybe this talk will be that for you. But the thing that I love about Unity is that we never forget those folks who are a first-time creator. And this talk may seem very high level to some Unity veterans out there, but it's monumentally important that we always stay mindful that we were forged in games, and people who are independently coming up through this new age that we're in, where anybody can bring something to market. It's always massively important that we always are mindful of those people. And that's what this talk is all about. So before I actually get into the Unity editor, the Unity engine itself, I just wanted to talk about a few editor, which you'll see live here in just a moment. And if this is your first time looking at this, it can feel a little bit intimidating, and that's perfectly fine. I remember the first time that I looked at one of the engines that our studio that I used to work at, first time I saw one of those engines, it terrified me. The first time I saw Unity, it wasn't immediately apparent to me, but if you just understand some key concepts, you can really embrace what is on the screen very quickly. So before we jump into the editor, I just want to say, if you can see my mouse, and I think you can, this is called the scene window. This is where you work with the 3D assets that are going to be in your game or in your project. This is the game window. This is what your creation will look like on the user's device, whether it's a phone or a tablet or a PC screen later, an Xbox, whatever it may be. This is the screen that represents what it will look like on the end user's device. And so this is where you work in the 3D space, and then this is what the user will experience on device right here. So scene window, game window, very important to understand. This area right here is what we call the hierarchy. It's probably very small on your screen, but this is the hierarchy. The hierarchy contains all the assets that live in this 3D space here. So if you put something here, it's going to exist in here in the 3D world. Some of these elements are graphical. It'd be a character or a cube, something of that nature. Some of these pieces are just nothing but pure data, nothing visual. And it's just data that, like player hit points, health, whatever it may be, that objects in the world need to be aware of. This is where all that type of data lives. Assets. The assets folder right here is where you bring assets from out of Unity into the project folder. And this folder here is all the data that you have to work with. So when you bring something from outside of Unity into here, or as Unity continues to evolve, we're offering more capabilities to build your content directly inside the editor, much more common these days than it used to be, thanks to some of our latest creation tools. You can either build your content directly in Unity, and it will live here in these assets folder, or you can bring it from outside of Unity. Max, Maya, Houdini, Blender, the typical artist workflow tools, items of that nature, Photoshop, sprites, images. You can bring them from outside of Unity, and they live in these folders. And once they're in these folders, you can pull them into here, the hierarchy. And once they're in the hierarchy, they're here in your world. It's a very important concept to understand. The objects that exist in the world are called game objects. And now we're going to stop there for a minute because that's a lot. And I just want to, while it may seem intimidating, I just want you to understand that actually, if you understand just those few key concepts, you can do quite some things. And let me show you a little bit about what I mean. So I'm going to tab over to the Unity editor. So this is a blank scene. This is exactly what Unity looks like when you start a brand new, fresh project. It looks exactly like this. Here is the scene view where you work with your assets and your data, and then here is the game view. Now, I'm going to show you just how very quickly it is to get something on screen in Unity. So every scene starts with one game object. That is the main camera. If I turn this off, you don't see anything. Right here, I'm going to toggle that back on. Every scene has to have at least one active camera. And the good news is we make that very easy for you. Every time you start a brand new blank canvas, blank scene, we're going to give you one camera there by default. You do not even need to know that you need to set that up. We do that work for you. Now what I'm going to do here in the scene is I'm going to right click here in the hierarchy. Now remember, the hierarchy is where we create our data or where we store our data that we want to be in the game world. So I'm going to undo what I just did there. I'm going to right click here in this blank space in the hierarchy. And I'm just going to create a 3D object. I'm going to create a cube, just a very simple cube. And there it is. And now that's in our 3D world. And you'll also see that because it's sitting directly in front of the camera is right here. And the cube is right here. And therefore, I can grab it around in this 3D space, move it. And if I were making a game, then the game would look like this. Now, this isn't very interesting, but what I'm just trying to display here is the concept that it is very easy and quick to get visual data into the Unity editor. I can rotate it here, and it's not very apparent. The rotation of it, because we need to light the scene up a little bit. So I'm going to right click here. I'm going to create a real-time light. a directional light, matter of fact. Now we can see much more context about this cube. We can see it's slightly below the camera. It's slightly rotated. And also one of the great things about Unity, when you think about lighting and real-time capabilities, you probably think, oh, like real-time lighting and real-time shadows, a very difficult thing to begin with. But let me create this cube, and I'll rename this ground. You can name these objects anything you want. And I'm going to make this 100 units long and 100 units deep. Now we have a ground that's very bright, so I'm going to turn the intensity of my light down. And there you can see how easy it is to work with real-time lighting. And then with this cube, let's see, where'd my cube go? It's right here. Here is my cube. And I'm going to take this camera. I don't like that shot. I'm going to rotate it down so that I can see it much more easily. So it's just that simple to get something up and running in Unity. If you don't like the shadows or the direction of the lighting, you just rotate the light and get a very, very different take. So you can see more context on the cube there. If you don't like the position of the camera or the angle of your shot, it's easy just to grab that camera and move it around just like that. Very easy. So we've put 3D geometry in space. And I could hit play, and this is not even a game. This is just a very boring 3D scene. But effectively, what we've done here, I'll maximize it, is we've created a 3D scene with 2 assets in just a few seconds. For many, game developer veterans, that may not seem very impressive, but if you're beginning your journey, hopefully you see that just to get something 3D with 3 dimensions on the XYZ axes in 3D space and being able to manipulate that data, look at it in different ways, it's very easy to do, actually. So I'm going to go back over to the presentation for a moment. So now that we've talked about the scene and game windows, the hierarchy and the assets, and game objects, what those mean, let's talk about materials and shaders for a minute. Materials and shaders are what allow us to give some texture and some visual representation of the look that we're going for with the objects that we have in the world. So let's just keep going with this little simple scene very quickly. And so right here, I'm going to just right-click in this assets folder. Now remember, this is where you bring your data in or create data that you want to use in the world. I'm going to create something here called a material. And I'm going to name it material ground, just to make it simple. And we'll say that this ground is green. So here I'm going to click on this. And over here is what's called the inspector. And this is where you set the different variables that are on your piece of data. So this material, I'm going to make it green. There we go. And I'm going to come back over here in the 3D space. I'm going to click on the ground. And right here where the default material lives, I'm going to replace it with material ground. And then boom, we have a green piece of ground, which is really great. And then also, let's do one more thing. Let's turn shadows on. So now we have some color and a little more texture to the world. We can tell the differentiation between the ground and the cube. And we're going to take that cube, and now that we have some shadow data, we can tell much more about the context of where it lives in the world. So let's just sit it on the ground there, and then let's move the camera to where we can see it. And then look, we have real-time lights and shadows. And if we don't like the angle of something in our shot, let's just rotate that light, get a different time of day, or just a different look of the shadows, whatever it may be. It's just that simple to get started. Now, believe it or not, my team has the good fortune to work on many of most of Unity's most notable titles. And the great thing about that is we get a lot of insights into the different ways that different developers approach the beginning phases of a project. And if you can think of some of the most successful games that you play that you love, they all start just like this, with a cube or a capsule running around on a flat piece of ground like this. So when these multi-million-dollar productions come to market, oftentimes we're involved in those from the earliest stages, from the first line of code up, and the games look just like this. Many of the games that you know and love and play today, I remember, and my team remembers, when they look just like this. And so you are not alone. At the beginning of your project, when you look at it like this, and you can imagine in your head what that final form of the game looks like and that polished version of the game looks like, it can seem very far away. But keep in mind, even the most notable games you can think of, they all start just like this. And so be encouraged by that. That is something to be very much encouraged by. And so now we talk about materials and also the concept of shaders. When you create a material and you apply it to an object, then all of a sudden down here, you're going to have this shader field. And shaders store all the graphical data of the object that you have in that world. And you can always come here and manipulate the way that it looks and polish the way that it looks. So let's create it. Let's copy this material, and let's just call this one material cube. And I'm just going to pick a random color. My daughter really loves purple, so I'm just going to pick something kind of purpley. There we go. All right, now on this cube, I'm going to replace the default material again with the cube material, and there, now there's some color there, and that's looking a little better. But maybe what we want to do now is, oops, sorry about that. Maybe we want to say, I don't want that skybox. It would look more stylized if we just had a flat color. So go to my camera. I'm going to, oops, wrong object here. Go to my camera. I'm going to change this from skybox to solid color. And I'm just going to have a nice, sunny day. It's a nice green and blue day outside. It's really good. Okay. And then a couple other things. Now here's where, now that you understand how to get things in a 3D space, how to set the camera and how to look at these things, there's some things you can start doing even without code that can create some interesting effects in the world. So let's talk about physics for a second. Physics like lighting and real-time shadows and items of that nature, that can seem intimidating, but let me show you how easy we make it. Many games that you can think of right now are physics-based games. Games where something flies through the air maybe and knocks things over, something like Angry Birds or something of that nature. Let me show you how simple it is to get real-time physics running in a high-fidelity way inside Unity. So I'm going to leave these objects here. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to copy this ground. Here's a duplicate of it. I'm going to raise it up very high. I'm going to make that much smaller, actually. So I'll make that 20 units by 20 units. And because it's a little bit confusing because it's the same color as our ground down below, I'm going to create another material. And we'll call this material platform. And we'll make this platform orange because orange and green tend to go very well with one another. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to replace the material there with the platform. I'm going to rename ground as platform just to make it apparent what it is. Now, you'll see that when you create an object in the world, you have this thing on here called a collider. Colliders are the bounds that we put around objects so that when two objects collide with one another, they're aware that they're in contact with one another or remain in contact with one another or exit contact with one another. But they won't react physically. They will just be aware of one another. However, if we do something interesting here, let's create a sphere now. And I'm going to put the sphere here in the platform, sit it right on top of it, and then take it back out. I'm going to raise the sphere up above it. Now, if I press play, let's also reset our camera because we have something more interesting going on now. All right, and let's rotate that down a little bit so we can see it very nicely. And let's move that shot a bit. It's not very nice. Okay. Now, if I press play, you might expect that the sphere is going to fall onto the plane and collide with it because it has this collider on it. So let's press play and see if that happens. It does not, and there's a reason. I just told you a moment ago that colliders just make objects aware of one another. But if you want to add real-time physics calculation and trajectory through the world to an object, you want to add what we call a rigid body. And when you want to add a component to an object in the world, you just come down here, you click on the object you care about, and I want this sphere to fall down due to gravity. So again, I'm going to remove that just to show it. I'm going to click on the sphere. I want to give it some physics properties. I'm going to add what we call a rigid body. I'm going to add that. I'm going to make sure that we have gravity on it. And now, I believe, if all works well, when I press play, we're going to have real-time physics. And what I'm going to do here actually is rotate this plane down a little bit so that we give it a little bit of a, well, let's do it a different direction actually, matter of fact. Let's rotate that way, and then maybe we'll even rotate the ground and see if we can make something interesting happen here. Oops, sorry about that. Rotate that down. Now I'm going to pull, okay, so we're just going to see if this works now. So theoretically, what should happen, unless I've made some sort of huge mistake, which is quite possible. I can see my cube collider is wrong already. Ground. Let's see. All right, let's just go ahead and press play and see what happens here. I think I've done something wrong, but we can fix that. We'll show you how to take a look at these things. So the sphere theoretically should fall and roll right off. So we have real-time physics already. It's going to fall to the ground. I think it's going to miss it. Nope, it got it. Correct. And now look, it's just going to roll off. So what kind of fun game could you make just like this? Some sort of crazy golf game where you just roll objects off of platforms to try to get a hold on there. Now it's going to fall into infinity there because there's no data below it. And so it's just that simple to get something going. And so already I've shown you how to work in the scene and the game windows, hierarchy, where the object data, where the data lives, assets that are stored here. You bring those into the hierarchy to put it here in the 3D space. Game objects are the type of data that exists in 3D space. Materials allow you to give color and texture and a look to the objects in the space. I've shown you how real-time physics, how simple it is. Now, with just that, with just the physics-based items, you can create some pretty fun types of games. But there's a couple things that you're going to want to embrace beyond that, which are scripts, maybe a little bit of light programming, or even alternatively, as Unity's capabilities have grown, we have codeless options now, such as our Bolt visual scripting technologies that allow new creators who haven't yet embraced a programming language to get the same results that you can get through C# code or other types of code through a graphical interface where you can express intent, and that intent is represented as code type logic in the 3D space to help you make your game if you're not quite ready to pick up programming. But I want to encourage you to also think about, I want to encourage you to think about not being scared to write your first lines of code if you haven't already. And so I actually made a very silly game just this morning, about an hour before this presentation, in this exact same project. So I'm going to hop back over to it. Now, I've shown you all these things, including physics. And the reason I showed you a ball dropping out of space to land, interact, and roll away from these objects that are tilted is to show how easy it is to get those physics properties working. Now, I created a couple extra types of folders and assets over here. I'm going to go to this very silly scene called raindrops. Now, again, the spirit of the intent here is to not show you something that looks beautiful or polished or brilliant. It's to show you something that looks just a little bit silly. And I was thinking, what genre, just using physics, could be pretty easy to get somebody started on? And I thought, the whack-a-mole genre is pretty easy, but I'm going to say that actually. I'm going to hop over to this other scene. Now, I showed you how easy it is to create 3D geometry and whatnot. So here you can see a similar looking scene. I created this morning. There's some nice little fences here and whatnot. And if you don't like the way that it looks in the game, imagine this is a mobile phone. You can just reposition the camera and polish that up and whatnot. You can just pull that back and rotate that down, however you want it. So it's just very easy to, really set and dress your scene that way. And again, here, just even if I wanted to add on to this fence, I would just, this is just a cube, effectively, 3D cube. I'm going to put that right here in this fence object. I'm just going to sit it on top of it. And then I've already pre-populated some other material. So I'm going to apply this material brown to this. And now look, now I've just created another part of this fence. And I'm just going to scale that up here, right here. Very easy to do that. Now I have a whole other section of this fence. And also, I just wanted to show you that to show you how easy it is to create simple types of art, even if you're beginning your journey. There's nothing wrong with using very primitive geometry like this to create something very cute and stylized. It happens all the time, even in games that you're aware of and that you love. And also, another great thing is once you have data in the hierarchy, you can just replicate it. So here, I'm going to click on this segment of the fence. And maybe I want to extend this out a little further. I'm just going to duplicate that. I'm on a MacBook, so it's if I were on Windows, it would be Control-C to copy, Control-V, but to paste it. But here in Windows, I'm just going to Command-D. It'll duplicate it. I'm just going to drag that over. I'm going to duplicate it again, and I'm just going to have a larger pillar here. I'm going to make that a little taller and whatnot. Great. So it's very simple to start dressing a scene up. And I know that we're coming up on time, so I'm going to try to wrap this up very quickly. But just with the spheres and a little bit of geometry, I created this game earlier with just a little bit of code. I just want to show you that. It's just a couple little scripts that make all this happen. So here's like some happy looking raindrops. They're just going to fall out of the sky, and I click them, and it's just very easy to do that. And every time I click one, You see that I collect it, and I have 30 seconds to do it. And yeah, it's just very simple game, and these cubes are a little bit silly looking. My wife actually helped me kind of make these earlier just to be funny. But yeah, just with simple geometry, I made a cute little face. I'll pause it so you can get a little better look at these crazy looking little guys. So just with very simple geometry, created these, funny, smiley little raindrops, a fence, a pool, and then with just a couple little scripts, what's happening here is these raindrops, they have this little tiny script on them. I'm just going to open that up real quick. And I just want to show you this. With just this little bit of code, everything that you're seeing on that screen is happening right now. Effectively, it has a rigid body on there, like I showed you earlier. These raindrops do. You can see the rigid body. That's what's making them fall out of the sky. And then when these collide with this object, when they collide with water, and you'll see how I tag that. When they collide with an object that is tagged as water, as you see here, they disappear. And then just that simple bit of code applies that point to the UI. And the last thing I want to talk to you about was the UI. So right here, you'll see something called a canvas. If I turn this off, you'll see the UI goes away. This is a very simple, primitive, not very pretty UI. I'm not an artist. I'm a programmer. Right here is where you store your graphical data, the 2D data that you want to overlay on your screen so that you can see the progress in your game. The timer counting down, I'll unpause it, you can see that's counting down. And then you'll see that as this guy collides, he goes away. But as I collect one more, it goes up here. Great, and that's it. And so I just wanted to show those few little things, that little bit of code. This is not a deep dive into code. I wanted to show you primarily what you can do without code to get started in setting up your world, and also how to use physics to create some interesting scenarios without code. That's usually a great place to inspire people to get started on this journey with physics, because you can see something moving throughout the world. And when you see something moving, there's this spark of inspiration that happens where it's like, oh, this world is actually alive, and I built this world, and I'm going to challenge myself to go complete my vision. And if that means I get a visual scripting solution like Bolt, or learn a little bit of programming, that's what Unity's here to do, is to help you embrace those other types of technologies and capabilities so that you can grow on your journey as a creator. And whether your goal is to be an independent game developer, an independent digital filmmaker, or join the AAA game industry, we want to be an instrumental part of your journey and how you start down that path. So we would love to hear from you as you go along this journey. And so I'm going to stop sharing the Unity editor now. And also, just very quickly, we're coming up on time. We have 2 minutes left. I'm going to show you very quickly. If I wanted to, I just open this window, and I could deploy this application to any of these devices. I'm not going to do it right now. It takes about 30 seconds to do it. But I actually wanted to just say that you can target all those devices. And the final thought is you can absolutely do this. Keep in mind, I said at the beginning of this presentation, I was not a computer science major. I was about 25 years old, out of university, already in the industry when Unity first came out. And it was Unity that inspired me to recommit my career and pivot into more of the game development side rather than just the audio side of it. And I'm still a huge fan of music, and I'm still a musician to this day, but my professional passion is helping others become creators. And that's what the team that I'm on is all about, solutions engineering. That's why I'm so proud to be a part of it. And with that, I'm actually going to stop sharing now. And I don't know if we have any moments for Q&A or whatnot, but if so, I would be happy to take a question or two. But I do believe we're out of time. I'll leave it to the events team to decide about that.